any person, guy or girl, you have to ask yourself, you really do have to ask yourself, what am I comfortable making? What would a good life look like for me? Am I the type of person that wants to make no ceiling on my income? And do I want to sit or stand? How am I with people? Do I want to be hiring people? I'll tell you, you don't.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Real Pasadena Podcast. This show is dedicated to sharing the experiences of local business owners and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs here in Pasadena, Maryland, and beyond. My guest on this episode is Bricen Weeks, owner of Brice's Barbershop. Bricen's journey into entrepreneurship began with a passion for barbering and a vision to create a community-focused barbershop. From humble beginnings, Brice's Barbershop has grown into a well-respected establishment with a 20-year track record in Pasadena. In our interview, Bricen shares his insights on the value of college education, the challenges and rewards of entrepreneurship, and the importance of continuous learning in business and personal growth. This episode is sponsored by Buxton Media Productions, your one-stop shop for video production, podcasting, and editing services. Whether you're looking to produce a promotional video for your business, create more consistency with your social media content, or even start your own podcast, Buxton Media Productions has everything you need to get started. They even have a local studio right here in Pasadena where we're recording this podcast. To learn more, visit them online at buxtonmediaproductions.com. Well, thank you for being here today, Brice. Appreciate you coming and being on the podcast. I want to start our conversation, as I've started all of these episodes, with really kind of going back to kind of pinpoint at what point, in your life did you decide to start a business and choose this path of entrepreneurship? Obviously, we mentioned it's not always just clear cut, like I made a decision. So what did that look like for you?
So for me, after college, I worked for Legg Mason in the finance industry, and I was an independent financial advisor. I didn't enjoy sitting behind the desk. I knew that I wanted to do something with my hands. When I started looking at people on construction sites, I was envious, and I was going to sit in a beautiful office. I really was. It was I had an oriental rug, and I was on the 12th floor, sometimes looking at beautiful views, and I didn't like the fact that I was seated looking at a computer every day. It was debilitating. My back hurt. Sedentary life was not for me. One of the things I appreciate about my job currently is that I get to stand, and I appreciate that. I believe I mentioned with you in passing that if I did still have a computer-related job, I would choose to stand today. And even if that was tough after an extended period of time. I appreciate that I'm standing. I chose the barbershop because I wanted to do something with my hands, and I had cut a lot of my friends' hair over the years.
I was going to ask, like, how do you ultimately decide I'm going to cut hair?
So I had done 1,000 haircuts and never gotten paid a penny for my friends for years and years and years. I would say 7-8 years. Every weekend I cut all my friends' hair before we go out, or on Sunday before the work week. I was always cutting one of my friends' hair. And I estimate over those 10 years, it probably was close to 1,000 haircuts that I did for free, which is crazy to me, looking back at that. $5 $5 would have been nice.
Self-taught, or did you?
Yes.
Okay.
It's funny because on the day where I really had the epiphany that I wanted to do something different with my life, I saw a guy walking across a beam in the cold on a construction site, and I was envious of him, but I was not envious of the temperature he was working in. So it was a natural segue for me to go to barber school, and I wanted to do something with my hands. I knew I wanted to stand, but I also didn't think that I'd be very good in the cold for months and months and months, especially where you didn't have a choice. A couple of days, anybody can do it, but a long winter can be tough.
Yeah.
I found out just how little I knew about hair cutting when I went to barber school. And it fascinated me. Within the first day, I was like, wow, a lot of stuff I'm doing wrong.
Yeah. I want to talk about that a little bit, but first, was it, you're working at the financial place? Was it just, I'm quitting and going to barber school? Was there some overlap there? How did that transpire?
Yeah. So within a month, I had made the progression to, I left, at that time it was Smith Barney. Legg Mason had gotten bought out by Smith Barney.
Okay.
And within a month of me leaving the finance industry after 8 years, I was in barber school with some pretty shady characters. It was really a weird progression for me to go from wearing a suit every day to experiencing some of the different walks of life.
Yeah. What did that look like for you at that point? I mean, I know you have a wife and a family now. Were you single at that time? Were you able to just, to take that sort of, let's call it a risk, right? Or just that jump from the security, of a job of 8 years to say, I'm going to take this left turn, go to school, and start something completely different. What did that look like?
So it was very humbling. I'll tell you that. My notion of things might have been a little ill-conceived. I had a little bit of money saved. I didn't realize how fast I would go through it. Those 6-7 months prior to graduating barber school, they were summer months, and I was very active, and I was used to spending money. So it was challenging for me to batten down the hatches, spend a lot less. It was humbling. It was very humbling to go from having a steady income to, in many ways, being upside down. I remember my credit score. It suffered. It suffered through that event. It's been a long time now, and I have a good credit score now. But at the time, it was that's the only time in my life that I could remember my credit score being something that I wasn't proud of. So, yeah, and then you get to barber school, and the barber industry lends itself to all different types of walks of life, all different race, religions, and creeds. But a lot of people that are trying it out, they're in some form of rehabilitation services. They may have been imprisoned. A lot of times it's they're not always your upstanding citizens. So I went from dealing with people who had accomplished a lot in their life to going to an education type format with people that they hadn't had some of the best experiences in their life. So that was unique. That was unique for me.
Yeah. You mentioned learning, or not knowing. You did 1,000 haircuts, right? And then you go to school and you realize that you don't know anything about it. I'm sure that was humbling too. Was there ever a point going through that where you maybe question yourself, like, maybe I shouldn't do this? Or were you all in like, this is exciting, I'm gonna learn and just get better? So
it was such a leap for me. It was a pretty extreme leap that I had to, I don't know the saying, where you cut the boats away from the island. And I felt very, very much akin to that, where I was going to succeed to prove everyone wrong. That was sort of my motivation. There were a lot of people who said I was crazy. There were a lot. My girlfriend left me. She was a corporate attorney. She's like, "You've lost your mind." And 20 some years later, yeah, I think she would say she's surprised if she, hey, look, it worked out for him okay. And so, yeah, I think I was setting out to maybe try to prove people wrong that I could do it. And I was determined. I was going to stop at nothing. If that was your question, I knew that no matter what, I was going to do whatever it took. And there were a lot of long days. And there were definitely some question marks as to whether, in my own mind, there were question marks, especially when the income wasn't rolling in. I was like, wow, I could do almost anything and make this kind of money. And did I choose the right path? So yes, there were definite moments of question.
Yeah. So let's continue on with the story, and you get through barber school, right? That was one big challenge. Did you have the plan to say, I'm going to open up my own shop, or what did that look like from a business perspective? Was it just, I'm going to cut hair on my own, or
So
challenges is really what I'm trying to get to here.
I couldn't picture myself working as a solo shop or just catching the low-hanging fruit and just saying I'm going to work in somebody else's shop. My 100% intention when I went into barber school was to open my own shop, and as fast as it could possibly be done, and really start from scratch, build from the base and build up. I remember driving around and putting things on attaching them, affixing them to people's mailboxes, advertising, because the barbershop was slow. If we missed an hour at the barbershop, nobody was really coming in anyway. So we had to come up with a marketing plan that was, it wasn't super expensive. Yeah, that wasn't expensive, that was efficient, that was letting people know that there's a barbershop in the community that wasn't there before.
Where'd you start? Was it always in Pasadena?
It was in Pasadena. And I was lucky enough to have Pat, who's still with me 20 years later. We would take a break. He would take a break. And he would either go out and I would go out. We'd jump in and out of the car and attach him to a mailbox or put them on a door with a little hole. So yeah, the marketing was in that format. I tried a bunch of things, marketing that didn't work. Spent money on yellow pages, and that was kind of on the way out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Any other lessons learned along the way that you would do differently if you were to have to start over again?
I would say, the mantra of hire slow and fire fast. I always handled things the opposite. I would hire fast and let them disprove my quick reflex to, hey, let me see. And I always was hiring fast, and I resulted in firing even faster. I probably should have taken my time in the hiring. There were a lot of faces that came through that probably weren't well. They didn't represent the shop well. Over the years, there were periods of time where I was just hiring somebody, and they would only last a week. They not good people, so to speak.
Gotcha. So it was more of a screening qualification process that evolved over time.
I think you have to have some scrutiny in who you want to put around you and who you want to represent the shop. They're representing you. They're representing your name, your business. Yeah. And I was always trusting, but also, hey, I'll give you a shot. You get a chance to prove yourself wrong. Prove me wrong, I should say. And in no time, they would fire themselves. It wasn't even a decision oftentimes. I should have never hired them in the first place. And so if I had to go back, I think I would have been more deliberate and taken a more of a process of making sure that I was hiring the right people. So that's what I would do differently.
Let's talk about help along the way. Being an entrepreneur can sometimes be a very lonely place, right? And you're trying to figure things out on your own. Fortunately, I think most entrepreneurs, they have the grit. When they fail, they get back up again, and then they fail, but they learn from those experiences. Was there any steps along the way where you got help from anyone within the community or within the industry?
So not exactly the community or the industry, but I'm very, very lucky, very, very lucky to have not only Pat, who's been with me for 20 years. He's owned his own shop for 20 years. When I got there, Howard had owned his barbershop for 8 years. He was with me after I took over, he stayed with me for another 7 or 8 years, and we got along great. So I had 2 barbershop owners that worked at my barbershop. I don't like to say they worked for me, because very much they work with me. Yeah. And not the least of which is Alex. Alex has been there a decade now, and he has gone a long way to carrying my water when I'm not at the shop. He's done a lot of things that have really helped to carry it along, and he's been a real asset. I mean, most of the people in the area know who Alex is, and he's a really good representative of the barbershop.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of help in the hiring process that I was lucky to have people inside the shop who also wanted the shop to succeed. But I wouldn't say anyone outside the shop, outside of my family, that provided, hey, you might be going down the wrong road.
Yeah. So when did you meet Pat? How did that relationship come to be?
So the genesis of my relationship with Patrick is when I went to Mount St. Joe, I was friends with his son, and we played basketball together. And Pat was his dad, and he had a barbershop in Laurel. Well, he always seemed like happy, content, jovial, energetic. The same Pat that at 76 years old was there today.
Yeah.
I had to tell him, please don't come in tomorrow if it's a snow day. So I met him, I called him, spoke with him about the possibility of being a barber, and he spoke glowingly of it. Sometimes I question some of the things he told me, and he laughs today. But that's how I met Pat. His son and I are still friends. We went to college together. We went to Mount St. Joe together, and he's a great guy. And that's how that relationship started.
So he had his own shop at the time?
35 years in Laurel. It was called Town Center Barbershop. Okay. And he wanted to get out of the Laurel area. He really didn't want to own a barbershop anymore. He had done it for 35 years. He was actually thinking he'd be moving to Florida. So he was, in his mind, he was coming just to help out in the meantime.
Yeah.
And he's been there. There was a period of time where he was doing 5 and 6 days a week, and he's never ending. He cleans and does all kinds of things around the shop. I mean, he's nonstop cutting hair, very, very energetic for his age.
So was he able to help you more on like the business side of how a barbershop operates now that, you figured out, okay, I know how to cut hair now officially. Or did you have other education in terms of like running and operating a business? So
in graduating from college with a lot of business classes and marketing and accounting and working at Legg Mason and Smith, I understood the profit motive. I understood profit loss. I had a pretty good business acumen. What Pat did was he led by example, and I took his example. He's steadfast. He just grinds away. He's a grinder, one foot in front of the other, nonstop. So I learned the process of how to be a barber and turn it into a profitable business by being relentless. He's relentless. He's just nonstop, and he doesn't give in. He just constantly, every day, he stays on the task. And I think in order for the shop to work, that's how it has to be. I'd like to think that I've provided the same example to Alex. He tries to mirror what Pat and I are doing, in terms of just being there 6 days a week, working all the time. And I'm lucky. Look, Nadia and Brian, very lucky to have both of them too. They're both jovial spirits. They do a lot. Brian's there late at night, closing the shop all the time. I'm lucky to have the help I have.
Yeah. People is always a challenge, and we can circle back to that. I did want to touch on the whole college thing, because again, it's something we've talked about in the past. What are your feelings on college today as far as a path? Obviously, there was certainly some benefits to your experience going to college, taking those business classes to help you then shift into becoming a business owner. But what are your thoughts for anybody who's, in high school right now, and they're thinking about, the decisions of their future, and the steps that they should take?
So it's interesting. It's really an interesting dilemma now. I believe that college teaches you to meet demands. There's a certain professionalism, time deadlines. The paper has to be in by this or that. And we have a test on next Thursday, and you have to meet time restrictions. And I believe that can be very beneficial to most people. you have to show up. You have to do the job. You have to turn the paper in at a specific time. And you have to show your diligence. The society's changed so much. So many of the trades, a lot of people agree that the trades now, electrician, plumber, barber, there's so many different areas of the world now where people are making very, very real money working with their hands and doing things that when I was coming out of college in 1995, the money wasn't the same. It wasn't the same if you were a plumber or an electrician. It's going to be really hard for me not to advise my son to go into one of the trades, get his business classes, learn about how to run a business somehow, and possibly embark on a career in a trade, because I think it can be extremely lucrative. Mm-hmm. I see people come in the barbershop all the time. Some of the guys that have the most big boy toys, the big boats, the big house on the water.
Yeah.
They own a paving company. They're doing pavers. They're doing concrete. They're doing electrician. There's so many different ways to make money in today's realm. Obviously, technology is changing very quickly, and most people don't. They're married to their phones. It's made people a little bit more sedentary, and the plumbers and electricians are making a lot of money. They're making a lot of money. So, I'm getting to see it from a hilltop because I am a barber, and I'm getting to see a lot of guys come through.
Yeah, it's a unique perspective.
It is a weird perspective. It's surprising because, I get to see the guys who go to NSA, and I get to see how their work schedule is. And that's enticing too. If I were in this area and you could get in the work study program, if you're selected, I think it's a phenomenal program to get into that national security agency or working for the government. Great avenue. They have flexibility with their schedule. They're still demanding, but I think they have a lot more flexibility than, say, a business owner who's married to the job. You're constantly married to your phone, a phone call, a demand, a Sunday night organization of business.
What's up, Pasadena? I'm James Bowerman, your Pasadena Realtor and host of the Real Pasadena Podcast. As a lifelong resident, I've experienced firsthand what makes our town such an amazing place to live, work, and play. As a local real estate agent, having the opportunity to serve so many wonderful people in our community is truly a great honor. If you're thinking about making a move, let me show you how my knowledge and experience can help you achieve your real estate goals. To learn more or to schedule a private consultation, please visit realcreativegroup.com.
Do you think there's a way to kind of identify, early on? Because I believe there's certain traits that a business owner, an entrepreneur needs to have, a personality type, right? Going to work for the government, nothing wrong with that. But there's certain people who are going to succeed in a government job versus an entrepreneur. If you tell them to go to the government job, I think they're going to be miserable.
Sure.
Right? Is there anything that you think somebody could do to identify, or maybe how you identified traits early on that, led you to head into, to make that right turn into starting a barbershop?
So I think the question is, if I could go back in time and ask myself, or if I were asking my son or daughter, I think the first thing I would say is, do you want to work with your hands? How determined are you to make it work? Because I think that there's pitfalls. If you say, I just want to own my own business, and you think it's going to be a bed of roses, there's a lot of thorns. Mm-hmm. And the income stream may not be as steady early on. It presents a lot of challenges. I think that people should really spend time thinking about, do they want to cap on the money they can make? Because some people, they're extremely determined, and $250,000 isn't enough for them. And some people, $120,000 is plenty, right? And it's a lot of money. $100,000 is a lot of money in no uncertain terms. But there's some people who would say, heck, if I could work 12 hours a day and make 6 days a week, 7 days a week and make 500,000, that's the way I want to do it. Now, you have to be being honest with yourself. Are you lying to yourself? Do you really want to work 12 hours a day? Hiring people is extremely challenging for any business. We were talking off set here, and I think that you've maybe changed the way you look at things due to the need for hiring. One of the most frustrating aspects of being a business owner is the hiring process. Almost every business owner I speak with, to a man or a woman, would say the hiring is the most frustrating. They could grow their business infinitely if they could hire the right help. And a lot of times they're hiring very successful people, very accomplished on their resume. But once they get into the job and receive that salary, they tend to sit back and sit on their hands. So in terms of, I think any person, guy or girl, you have to ask yourself, you really have to ask yourself, what am I comfortable making? What would a good life look like for me? Am I the type of person that wants to make no ceiling on my income? And do I want to sit or stand? How am I with people? Do I want to be hiring people? I'll tell you, you don't. You don't want to be. I don't know anybody that says they like hiring anybody. Yeah. I haven't met anybody. You're just, sure, you can open up a successful business and you can do very, very well. But finding help is by far and away the biggest hurdle today.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges is when you transition from, being the technician to being the operator, right? Where you go from cutting hair to managing a team of people who cut hair or whatever the skill set might be. A lot of people can't make that transition, right? It's the working on the business versus in the business. A lot of people they want to be that technician. The only reason they started the business was, because they wanted the freedom, the flexibility, the ability to make unlimited or, an uncapped income, to make their own rules. But the reality is they are still the technician, right? And they make good employees, but not all of them can be a business owner. And I'll use that to transition into the scale at which a business may exist, whether, there's nothing wrong with being a one-man show, right? You could still be an electrician, plumber, whatever, and run your own business and be a one-man shop. Or you could grow it into a huge company, a huge franchise, have hundreds of employees. What are your thoughts on that as far as like determining where, obviously you're at a certain level, right? Do you have aspirations to grow? Are you happy where you're at now? What's your thought process on that?
So for a period of time, the shop had done very, very well initially, very well. The numbers we were putting out in terms of haircuts and just the overall busy nature of the shop was pretty extraordinary. It was pretty extraordinary relative to any other barbershop in the country. We would have been certainly top. Now that the structure has changed with appointments and things of that nature. However, I think one of the biggest challenges that business owners face, especially when they're front and center and present and working at arm's length with, if it were a plumber, a helper, a barber that's leading another team of barbers, is that you become friendly and they become a part of your life. You love them. You do. And the hardest part for me, and in talking with other business owners, for them, correcting somebody that you work with on a daily basis is one of my least favorite parts of my job, because that's not the relationship. We're all there simpatico to grow the business, to do the best job we can for the client base, for the clients who are coming in. And when I see there's a deviation there, it's very hard to step outside that box and say, wait a second, let's reel it back in. Personally, it's my least favorite. And I know another business in the area where he has one-man gang and he's got a helper and they're very friendly.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard for him to correct his partner, but he's the owner, his partner. He wants to continue to hire. In my case, I wanted to open another shop. I'm sorry to kind of circle back to that. I wanted to open another shop and maybe even two. At some point, I started to hire and fire, and I was hiring really quickly. And I started realizing that the people that I was hiring, I didn't want to keep firing. And my worker pool, I wasn't dealing with a worker pool of people who wanted to achieve, that wanted to say, hey, I'm willing to work at this barbershop this much, but this is what I expect of you. Are you willing to do that? Asking me. And my answer might be yes. But a lot of times they got very comfortable in their role, sometimes too comfortable. And they weren't looking to achieve. The bare minimum was their expectation. And I noticed that throughout the industry in the barbering as well as the hair. A lot of people got really comfortable really fast at a very low, they were setting a very low bar.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can this be? In my mind, while it was initially my intent to open multiple barbershops, the hiring process caused me to dial back and limit my thinking relating to that. I think a lot of businesses would agree that that's what causes them to say, wait a minute, I don't need the expansion. I need to do well with what I have. Yeah. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's good. So what continues to motivate you today? What drives you?
So I still want to represent the shop very well. We have a 20-year track record now. I want the shop to be thought of highly in the community. I still want to grow the business, the bottom line, the haircuts. We count the haircuts. We count the number of unique heads that come in. I still am looking to grow, but I want to grow this business and not grow the outside of Pasadena. And I think the motivating factor for me is the group that we have, Nadia, Brian, Alex, and Pat and I, 5 of us. I think that I still want to be held in high esteem in the community. And I mean that. We're all doing okay financially. We're all doing okay, but we want to do better. And we want to represent the community better. So the shop has a good track record, and I'd like to continue along that path. I'd like to continue along that path for as long as we can.
Awesome. Well, I can certainly attest to, the quality and the experience.
Thank you.
And running the best of Pasadena. I know you guys are always up there and very well thought of and well reviewed by the community members. So, last couple questions here, just kind of for fun. I'm going to do this one. So if you could meet anyone living or dead, go back in time, or they could be, still here today, and along the lines of business. I mean, it could be other things, but is there anyone who stands out in your mind that you would just love to have a coffee with and pick their brain?
Well, certainly fascinating. Elon Musk jumps out. How he is running SpaceX, Tesla, he's now X, Twitter. He's running 3 businesses, all thousands of times bigger than mine. And he's finding the time. He's finding the new avenues. It's pretty fascinating. It's a pretty fascinating thing that is happening right in front of our faces. He's changed the way cars are being driven. He changed the way spaceships go to space. He's changed Twitter, which to me is the most important social media platform. Free speech and in blurbs. And it's fascinating to me that he has the business acumen to put it all together and make it all work as a leader. So yes, I would probably choose Elon Musk. I would say he'd be my main. From athletes you always think of how they did it. I thought Tom Brady was a good leader, as I also thought Ray Lewis was a great leader. So those two would be my athletes.
Yeah, Elon Musk is a very surreal character in our lifetime to look at. I read his biography, and it was certainly very interesting. Yeah. The fact he's got a photographic memory, and what he's been able to accomplish in what seems like a very short amount of time is nothing short of impressive, and it'll be interesting to see because he's still a young guy, right? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what he continues to do moving forward. What about again, going back to the theme of always learning, always growing? I know you like books, you like podcasts. For our listeners and our viewers, is there any books that you say, you know what, this was a critical one for me that you should go check out and read?
So I lately I do read, but not as often as I've been listening to podcasts because I'm stuck in my car more than I would like. There were a number of books that influenced me, but as today, everything has changed towards media like you and I are having. And there's a couple podcasts that I think that I'm imparting to people. The Thomas Bilyeu podcast is a phenomenal podcast.
Impact Theory, yep.
Impact Theory. And, you know, you're driving along or you're waiting for somebody, your children at a youth event, which a lot of us are doing. And to get out of your car smarter than you got in your car is always one of my goals. Mm-hmm. I always want to be challenged because it really could be wasted time. I'm always fascinated when I get in my wife's car and the music's blaring. When I turn the car, I'm like, the ignition goes on and the music's blaring, and it's the direct opposite of my car. She's light and breezy and she's having fun.
Yeah.
I get out of my car and my goal is always to come away from the drive with just a little bit more knowledge or a different perspective. I believe you were sharing with me the Daily Stoic. And so there's podcasts that I think if you give the podcast realm a chance for the people that are not readers, I think that's something that they can really, in their free time, improve their knowledge, their wherewithal, maybe their perspective on a few things.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with technology, we've evolved from reading to listening, and obviously we're recording a podcast. So
sure,
I hope there's many people listening to this in their cars right now. It's also funny. I forget who I was talking to, but you know, years ago when our parents were listening to talk radio in the car, it was just like, what are you doing?
Right.
And now, like, here we are.
Yep.
Seems to be all I ever listen to is people talking on the radio, which it's true. Like I just want to learn something new every day. And you know, there's occasions where I'll listen to some music to shut it down, to unwind a little bit, because I think it can be we also reach a point where you're consuming too much, just like with anything else. You know, people, I read 200 books last year.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what did you actually learn and put into application? I'm at the point where, you know, I want to go back and re-listen to some key books that really impacted me, or, you know, podcasts. And I love Tom Bilyeu. He's part of the inspiration for me sitting here today to do this podcast. And you certainly start to see some reoccurring themes as you're listening to these people, as you align yourself with kind of their views. But yeah, this has been great.
I appreciate you having me. I do. Thank you, James. It's a unique experience for me. It's an honor. It's a privilege. I enjoy when you come in the shop. I always enjoy it, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of be heard.
100%. My pleasure. And wish you the best of luck. How can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
So we have a bricesbarbershop.com. Brice's Barber. That site got taken, so it's.
I was going to make sure we got the right domain.
Yes, bricesbarbers.com, and it's in Pasadena. You register online for your haircut. It shouldn't take more than 10, 15 seconds, especially the second time you do it. It's very, very seamless. The registration process is very quick. You click on a barber, type in your name, your email, maybe your telephone number. Usually the phone or the computer will autofill that for you. I'm available via text, available through the website. You can message through the website.
It's bricesbarber.com.
Yes.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you again for being here, and thanks for what you're doing with the community.
I appreciate you having me. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, James. I really do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Real Pasadena Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Real Pasadena is your local online source where we cover the real news and highlight the real people impacting our community. Be sure to check us out at realpasadenamd.com, where you'll also find all the show notes and additional episodes of the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be well, my friends.